Mia arrived at the old house just as a light rain began to fall. The night was cold, and the single porch lamp cast long, lonely shadows across the lawn. With a tired sigh, she unlocked the door, her light brown hair tied back, her eyes heavy with a weariness that went beyond simple travel fatigue. She stepped inside, pulling a small suitcase behind her. The air inside was thick with the scent of dust and memory. It was her childhood home, but it felt like a stranger's house now. Furniture draped in white sheets stood like ghosts in the dim, warm light. On the walls, family photos hung slightly askew, frozen smiles from a time long past. As she walked down the narrow hallway, her footsteps echoed in the unnatural quiet. At the very end of the hall was a single closed door. The last room. A place she hadn't entered in years. She paused, a knot of unease tightening in her stomach. Something felt wrong, a deep, quiet wrongness that seemed to emanate from that very door. Later, in the small, dated kitchen, Mia tried to shake off the feeling by making a cup of tea. The soft yellow light did little to chase away the encroaching darkness. The house seemed to have expanded around her, the silence stretching into an unnerving void. Then she heard it. A faint, rhythmic sound from the hallway. Knock, knock, knock. She froze, her hand trembling just above the teacup. She strained to listen, her heart pounding against her ribs. The hallway behind her seemed to have grown darker, the shadows stretching and twisting like grasping fingers. There was no one there, nothing to see, yet she had the distinct, chilling sensation of being watched. Summoning a sliver of courage, she left the kitchen and walked back down the hallway. A single ceiling light flickered overhead, casting the pale, stained walls in a strobe of sickly light. The air was heavy, oppressive. As she passed the door to the last room, she noticed it was now slightly ajar. A sliver of absolute darkness lay beyond it, a void so deep it seemed to swallow the light from the hall. With a hesitant hand, she pushed the door closed, the click of the latch unnaturally loud. She turned to walk away, but a faint creak stopped her. She looked back. The door was slowly, silently opening again, as if pushed by an invisible hand. There was no draft, no explanation, just a slow, deliberate movement that made the hair on her arms stand on end. She retreated to the living room, sinking onto an old couch covered in a dusty sheet. A single lamp on a side table sputtered, its light unsteady, making the shadows on the walls dance and writhe. It was then that a new sound started, a soft, distant humming. A woman's voice, weaving the melody of a lullaby she hadn't heard in 2 decades. The sound seemed to drift from the dark hallway, a siren's call from the past. A sudden, intense cold washed over her, so frigid she could see her own breath plume in the air. Fear, sharp and icy, propelled her to her feet. She walked slowly, hesitantly, toward the hallway. The door to the last room was now wide open, revealing an entrance of pure pitch-black darkness. The light from the hall stopped abruptly at the threshold, refusing to penetrate the blackness within. With a flashlight clutched in her trembling hand, Mia crossed the threshold. The beam cut a narrow path through the dusty, colorless room. It had been left untouched for years. In the center of the room stood a simple wooden chair. Behind it, a tall, oval mirror was draped in a white sheet. The floor was littered with old sewing tools and tangled nests of thread. As she watched, the sheet over the mirror seemed to lift and fall as if it were breathing. Her heart hammered in her chest as she reached out and pulled the sheet away. The mirror's surface was dark, almost opaque. It showed her reflection, but something was wrong. Her reflection's movements were slightly out of sync with her own. Then, the reflected Mia raised her hand and pointed slowly, deliberately, at the space directly behind the real Mia. She spun around, flashlight beam cutting wildly through the empty air. There was nothing there. The chair was vacant. The room was empty. She turned back to the mirror, her breath catching in her throat. Her reflection was no longer a perfect copy. It stood unnaturally close to the glass, its face just inches from the surface, while Mia herself was still several feet away. Its movements were distorted, delayed. Then, the reflection's lips moved, forming silent words that chilled her to the bone. "I remember you." At that moment, the lights in the room flickered violently before plunging into total darkness. The only light was the weak beam of her flashlight. A whisper, impossibly close, brushed against her ear. "Don't leave me alone again." She felt a cold puff of air on her skin, intimate and terrifying. The next thing she knew, she was on the dusty floor, gasping for air. The door to the room was shut. She scrambled to her feet and threw her weight against it, but it wouldn't budge. It was sealed. She turned back, her eyes landing on the mirror. A crack now marred its top corner, and in the reflection, she saw something that made her blood run cold. Her mother was sitting in the wooden chair behind her, her long, dark hair obscuring her face, her form pale and still. Mia whipped around. The chair was empty. She looked back at the mirror. The reflection of her mother remained, a silent, ghostly observer. And then, her own reflection began to move independently. It started to rise, a twisted smile on its face, extending a hand out from the glass toward her. At the same time, a pale, cold hand shot out from under the real mirror and clamped onto her ankle. She screamed, kicking frantically until she broke free. Scrambling backward, she watched in horror as a tall, distorted shadow began to crawl out of the cracked mirror. Its limbs were elongated, its fingers stretched into unnatural claws. It moved with a sickening, jerking motion, its body bending at impossible angles as it pursued her. She fled into the hallway, which had become a nightmare tunnel of flickering lights. She sprinted for the front door, the shadow creature skittering rapidly behind her. She grabbed the handle, twisting and pulling, but it was locked tight, held fast by some unseen force. The shadow rose up behind her, towering over her, its spindly fingers reaching for her neck. Suddenly, the front door burst open. Her brother, Tom, stood on the threshold, his face a mask of confusion. The instant he stepped inside, the shadow creature vanished. The house fell completely silent. The flickering stopped. An eerie calm settled over everything. Mia stood frozen, trembling, her eyes wide with terror as she stared down the empty hallway. The door to the last room was open again, a silent, dark invitation. Tom rushed to her side, asking what was wrong, what had happened, but she couldn't find the words. She slowly turned to face him, her expression completely blank, her eyes distant and empty. But behind her, in a tall hallway mirror, her reflection didn't match. It lagged for a fraction of a second. And then, as the real Mia remained emotionless, the reflection's lips slowly, unnaturally, curled into a deeply disturbing smile. Its eyes were hollow, dark pits. The smile widened, a chilling, silent promise of horrors yet to come. Hey everyone, if you're enjoying the video, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps out a lot, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Thanks.